All right, what is going on, all football fans? Welcome back to the JDW Sports Network. We're ready to give you my NFL Week 3 picks, predictions, and give you a little bit of analysis on each game and what I think about them. So it's not waste too much time. Thursday night football, Bills at home taking on the Dolphins. Dolphins coming up from Miami. Typically, the Dolphins already struggle with the Bills, and with this game, Dolphins. I mean, they're having like player-only meetings already. It's not looking good culture-wise or anything. But I don't see the Dolphins doing it here. Maybe they get the ball first, score quick, and then they kind of make this kind of a game where the Bills have to keep up. But we know Josh Allen's capable of doing that too. Don't even know if that happens. But Tyreek Hill is pissed off. Tua doesn't seem right. The head coach is not right. But give me the Bills 36-13. Wouldn't be shocked if they cover either. It's a big point spread, but I wouldn't be shocked if they cover. All right, next game, you have the Cleveland Browns and the Green Bay Packers. This game could be a lot closer than what a lot of people think. That Browns defense is nasty. It's really good, and if you just look at the score from last week, it really doesn't do justice to how good this Browns defense played. You go back and you watch that game, that Browns defense line was giving the Ravens offensive line troubles all day long. We know that Ravens offense line is really good and such, and even the cornerbacks were tackling very well. That Browns defense is nothing to joke around about, so I can see this game being very close early on. I could see maybe Joe Flacco in this offense getting out to an early lead, even though that Packers defense is no joke either. Don't let me, I'm not trying to overshadow the Packers defense. It's very good too, but this Browns defense is just as dangerous, if not more. It's just a matter of fact, the Packers are just a better football team. It's kind of the exact situation and my exact reasoning for picking the Ravens last week. The Packers are just straight up the better football team, better defense, more superstar power. If the Browns had somewhat of an offense, they would probably be pretty good this year and knock off a couple good teams. But the way Joe Flacco looked last week, I mean, at this point, I feel like you might as well put one of your young quarterbacks in, whether it's Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders. Give me the Packers 27-10. The big thing is I could see this Browns offensive line or this Browns defensive line get after Jordan Love early and maybe rattling Jordan Love. But I think that by the time the second half comes around, this Packers offense is going to settle in. Love is going to get the ball out quick. And I really think it's going to be like that Titans and Rams game last week where the Titans kept it close the first half. The second half, the better team. We saw the clear better team, and I think that's what's going to happen in this game as well. Give me Packers 27-10 over Cleveland. All right, the Indianapolis Colts and the Tennessee Titans. I'm taking the Colts 26-17. Funny enough, we were just talking about the Titans. Really interesting game last week. They put up a decent fight in the first half. Like I said, they would. I thought that the Titans would keep that game closer than a lot of people thought. Second half, only score 6 points. You just really couldn't do anything. Yeah, I think Cam Ward. I think this is where this. I think this is going to be the not as good defense as the Titans have played in the first 2 weeks. Played some really nasty defenses the first 2 weeks in the Broncos and then the Rams. This Colts defense, I don't know if it's as talented. I don't think that defense line is as strong. But the Titans' offensive line is so rough that, it's going to be a long day for Cam Ward in terms of standing behind that offensive line. But where I think this Lou Anarumo defense is going to excel is versus some young quarterbacks this year, like Cam Ward. Cam Ward is good, knows what he's looking at, but he is young and he is growing. So I think that this is where Lou Anarumo's defense is going to shine this week. I think they're going to get a couple turnovers because he likes to mask things. He likes to rotate the safeties around, and he likes to try and fool you and disguise things. And I think versus a young quarterback versus Cam Ward, and then on top, just trying to figure it out, and then you have an offensive line not really protecting well. I think that the Colts defense is going to have a good day. And I also think that this Colts offense is going to have a decent day. I could see this game being pretty close and the Colts maybe scoring a late score to really put this game away and, end the game. I think Jonathan Taylor goes off and has a huge day. But, yeah, give me the Colts 26-17 over the Tennessee Titans. But really, it's a divisional game. I could see an upset, but give me the Colts. All right. Yeah, the Vikings and the Bengals. This is probably the most difficult game for me to predict this weekend. I'm taking the team that is a little more well-rounded, even though there are so many injuries to the point where it's like, yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if the Bengals win this one, but I do think the Bengals or the Vikings are a little bit better coached. I think, it's going to be Carson Wentz, but I think the Vikings are going to run the ball well. They'll get after Jake Browning. All Jake Browning really has to do is get that ball out quick to Chase Higgins and Yoshi Vosh and some of his weapons there. And, the Bengals could probably put up some points, but that Vikings defense is no joke. And Brian Flores is going to know what he wants to do. He's going to disguise. He's going to make it really difficult on Jake Browning. And I think Carson Wentz is going to do just enough playing with Kevin O'Connell, even though, I don't think we see, a really good Carson Wentz, but I think we see a Carson Wentz that's good enough to get the job done. And the Vikings win this very difficult matchup to predict. But give me the Vikings. I think they run the football well. I think their defense is better as well. So give me Minnesota in a close, difficult game to predict over the Bengals, 20-16. Next up, you got the Patriots and the Steelers. This is going to be a close one. I thought this was a little bit of a tough one to predict as well. That Steelers defense is really not the defense we're used to seeing from the Steelers, and I don't think it's going to form into that typical Steelers defense we're used to seeing from the past. But I think this is one of those games where Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf, they do just enough to win this football game. I do worry if they can't get that run game going. I think the Patriots are a little more capable of getting a run game going, but offense line is young, going up against the defense line that's led by TJ Watt, Hayward. Even though the secondary hasn't been too good, if Drake May can get that ball out quick to some of his weapons, and if he could have a good day, because I feel like Drake May has had his fair share of mistakes and rough goes the last 2 weeks. I felt like he was, very inconsistent within the two games. I saw the Patriots get out to the quick lead versus the Dolphins. I don't think they get that versus the Steelers. And then you had the kickoff return. So they had a couple of things going their way. They almost squandered that 12-point lead. And, I think a Chris Boswell field goal is going to be the difference in this game over, the Patriots not really being able to hit a field goal. The kicking game was rough last week. 2 missed extra points. That was just a very, very bad week in terms of kicking and so far this season in general. But Pittsburgh, I like Mike Vrabel. I think he usually has his teams ready. They're gritty, but I just think that the Steelers are a little better here. I hope that you get that run game going a little bit, but nonetheless, I think either way, I think Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf, and the tight ends that they have over there are absolutely incredible. I think that the Steelers have just enough firepower, and Chris Boswell wins it with the field goal. All right, you got the Bucs and the Jets. This game really shouldn't be close. I have this score a little odd for what a lot of people might think for this game. 20-33, that's a little closer than what people may be thinking or what this game should be. But I think that the Jets score a late game touchdown. I think they get a couple garbage time touchdowns and make it and make the score kind of look close at the end. But really, it's not going to be very close. Even though the Bucs are really beat up, they are going up against a really, Justin Fields is a different challenge for them so far this season. They played Penix. Penix isn't really that much of a scrambler, but Fields is a little bit different of a challenge. So we'll see how the Bucs do against that kind of a quarterback. But Bucs defense will be fine. They did very good against C.J. Stroud in week 1. C.J. Stroud hasn't really looked the same, to be honest with you, to begin with. But, with Baker Mayfield, even if this game is close, like it shouldn't be, Baker Mayfield's going to find a way to win the game on the fourth quarter drive. He does it all the time. He's so clutch. And I just think that the Bucs are so much better, well-rounded, very well coached. And, when you have a quarterback like Baker Mayfield back there, like I said, they are injured. They do have quite a few injuries, but this Bucs team is just overall better. The defense, I think the Jets are going to have a long day. I think it's what's going to happen when the Jets have to face a competent defense. And, we saw what happened last week. I think it's going to be a similar thing. Just going to be, I think maybe they score a couple touchdowns and, late. Maybe they put some points on the board that way. But other than that, nah. Give me the Buccaneers 33-20. I wouldn't be shocked if the game is not even this close, to be honest with you. All right. Eagles and Rams. This is my kind of like upset for this week. I at first I did have the Eagles. I'm like, it's in Philadelphia. The Rams have to come from LA, and typically they those teams are at a disadvantage. But let me tell you this: I think that this Rams passing offense, I trust that passing offense a lot more. A heck of a lot more to make that extra play than the Eagles passing offense does. You're going to have to be able to pass the ball a little more effective eventually. And, all that about Matthew Stafford, the back and stuff going into the season everyone was talking about. Yeah, I could say that's, you could quite simply look at that and be like, yeah, that was a whole load of BS because, I mean, he put that right to rest. It's really like there was nothing, it's really like, when Matthew Stafford is on, he's like one of the best of the best. And, Rams have some really good receivers options. I mean, of course, Puka is incredible. Devontae Adams is really good on the other side, and it's the offensive line is the biggest issue, and that Eagles defensive line has actually been a little disappointing. Throughout the first couple weeks here, Jahad Campbell has been a little disappointing. He's had a couple good plays, but not enough. But give me the Rams 24-20. Over the Eagles. I think the Rams go to Philly and they upset the Eagles. Matthew Stafford, and I think that passing offense, I think they're going to get out there quick and they're going to score quick and they're going to make the Eagles have to feel like they have to play catch up in terms of passing the football. And, that's something I'm not too sure if this passing game is capable of yet. They haven't shown that so far this season. They struggled week 1 versus the Cowboys defense, which we saw what happened in week 2. Giants absolutely have their way. So kind of makes you question, how capable is this Eagles passing game? And when you're playing another team that can do it as good as anyone else with Matthew Stafford, Puka, Devontae Adams, I think that the Rams are going to come away with the win this weekend in Philadelphia. Like I said, I did have the Eagles at first, and maybe the Eagles can get out early, quick, run that football. But the Rams have a good defense too. They have a pretty damn good defense. Good defensive line, good front seven. Decent secondary, so the Eagles' offense is really gonna have to be at their best, and I'm gonna pick off what I've seen and haven't seen so far. I've seen a Rams offense. Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay know how to work around an offensive line that isn't the greatest. They know how to work around that. They've been in the game for a long time, and I think the Rams. I think that the Rams are going to overcome that. I think the defense makes that extra play that's needed. And they, even though I have it only at 24-20, here I am saying the Rams need to get out quick and keep scoring, and of course the Eagles have to play catch up and and pressure that offense to really pass that football. Until the Eagles can prove that they could do that, I don't know if they could. Now if the Eagles, if they come out, run the football, defense gets a stop or two, and then they go up a couple scores early. Then the Eagles probably win this game, but that's their key. They have to get up early. I don't know, they have weapons in Smith and Brown and Hurts shown that Hurts is inconsistent sometimes, but it is an early season thing too. Maybe it's just early season, still trying to figure things out. So we'll see. It's still early in the year, but early in the year, still having those growing pains. The Rams aren't going to have those growing pains when they're throwing the football, so give me the Rams in that one. The Commanders and the Raiders, I have this one a lot closer than what a lot of other people do, and that's because, Geno Smith, what you're going to get from that offense. The offensive line isn't too good, and they're probably going to struggle. That Raiders offensive line is probably really going to struggle versus this Commanders front. This Commanders front is one of the better in the league. They're tough. They're all very athletic, and they know how to get to the quarterback 24/7. But I think Geno Smith, if he could stop putting the ball in harm's way, he'll be all right. The Raiders' offense will be all right, but Gentry hasn't able to get it going. But I think this is a game where they get things going a little bit. Even if Jaden Daniels plays, I do think this is still going to be a close game. But yeah, I think the Commanders have a lot. They have quite a bit more firepower in offense. So, even if Jaden Daniels doesn't play, I still think the Commanders find a way late in this game. The guy that they're going to have coming in for Jaden Daniels if he doesn't play is Marcus Mariota. And I think Mariota is capable of coming in, stepping in, and being a decent backup every now and then. I think there's a reason why he's still in the league. Having that duty and being a quarterback too, going around the league, because he's capable in that aspect. He's not one of the best backups, I would even say, but I'd say he's good enough to give you a chance to win every game that he plays. And that's what you ask of your backups. You just ask them to do their job, and I think Marcus Mariota is capable of doing that. So either way, give me the Commanders 24-23 over the Raiders. Like I was saying, the Raiders were they played better versus the Chargers than I thought they would. But if Geno Smith could take care of the ball, stop turning the ball over, get that passing game going a little bit, but it's going to be tough versus a Commanders defense that is not too bad. So we'll see what this game brings for us, but give me the Commanders 24-23. I could see the Raiders winning this one, though. Either way, if Daniels plays or not. Panthers and Falcons. Falcons are going to have their way in here. Their young guys have a couple games under their belt now. They are going into Carolina, but I don't really think that matters too much. The Panthers just have been on the struggle bus, man. It sucks. Coming into this year, I thought that the Panthers were going to be one of those teams that come up from the weeds and emerge from the weeds and find a way to be a good football team. I thought they had a lot of good pieces in place, with young, Leggett, Tetra McMillan and such, Chuba Hubbard. They have some really good pieces. It's just they're struggling to put it together. They're struggling to start and finish. They're struggling just to do what they need to do. And the defense hasn't been good. Defense has really struggled. They almost found a way to come back in that Cardinals game, and I like seeing a team that fights till the very end, but versus a very, very talented Falcons team, I think that the Falcons are going to take this one with ease. Penix has looked good. That Falcons defense and that defensive line is nasty. They're going to get after Bryce Young all day long. So yeah, give me the Falcons 30-14 over Carolina. All right, here's one of my upsets of this weekend. I know a lot of people are looking at this game, and I think a lot of people are taking the Texans. But I'm taking the Jaguars, and let me tell you why. This Texans team is C.J. Stroud just is not looking like the C.J. Stroud that we've known. That he's just not looking right. So, and Trevor Lawrence isn't really too impressive himself, and going up against the Texans defense that is absolutely wild. I think the Texans might have the best defense. I know we talked about the Browns and the Packers defenses, but the Texans defense might be the best in the NFL. At every single level, they have superstars and big-time playmakers, but that's not the issue. The issue has been their offense. They've been struggling to get anything going consistently on offense. It's because every time C.J. Stroud snaps the ball, the guy, the pressure is right in his face, and then on top of that, C.J. Stroud just hasn't looked right. Maybe it's because just the amount of pressure he gets every single game. It makes him makes it really difficult, and then maybe he's forming some bad habits. But give me Jacksonville, man. I think Jacksonville could run the football well, even though the Texans have a really good defensive line. They have a really good defense in general. I think that the Jaguars are going to surprise people with the run game in this game. I think Travis Etienne gets the wheels rolling, and I think it's going to help Trevor Lawrence just enough. They have the weapons, they have the guys to make big plays. So give me the Jaguars, man. I'm taking the Jaguars to upset the Texans. I think the Jaguars defense isn't that bad. It's good enough. It's decent. The Jaguars overall actually have a decent football team. It's just if Trevor Lawrence could put it together and if Trevor Lawrence could step up, then I think the Jaguars are definitely going to stay in the AFC South race. But you look at this game, it's like, this is a must-win for both teams because the Colts are looking pretty good. You kind of want to, it is only week 3, but the Texans, they don't want to go 0-3. You go 0-3, those voices, it's going to start getting loud over there. Let's just say that. And then Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence, you're 1-1. You want to go 2-1, keep up with the Colts. But like I said, it's only week 3, so it's early in terms of division races and stuff like that. But you do want to keep yourself in the mix and not fall too far behind. So huge game for both of these teams. So, But give me Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville is just a better overall team. The Texans have a lot of injuries as well. So give me Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville upsets Houston here. Wrong way. All right, Broncos and the Chargers. I had a hard time with this one, and I was very close to picking the Chargers. Now, this is one that I could see changing going into Sunday. When Sunday comes, I could see myself changing this one, and I'll post it on YouTube if I do. I'll do a little post. Excuse me. Broncos. Defense was rough last week. They struggled a little bit. Indiana Jones kind of just carved them up. It felt like. See, this game, I don't even know where to start in this game. But I'm taking the Broncos because I think Bo Nix and the Broncos bounce back. I think after that game, a lot of people are talking about that Broncos defense and saying that Broncos defense is not very good. Just because Daniel Jones threw all over them and the Colts offense really did whatever they wanted for the most part. I highly disagree. This Broncos defense is still one of the most talented defenses in the NFL, and I do think their run defense is better than what they looked versus the Colts. The Colts just have a really good run game. And the Chargers do too. The Chargers have a really good O-line, Amari and Hampton, and they have a couple of guys that can make some big plays and, crank out some big run plays and crank out just some good rushing plays and keep the ground game going strong. But I think where the Chargers are going to fall through is even though they have Quentin Johnston, he's been showing up. I say he has a down game. I know Led McConkey is absolutely wonderful, but I'm just saying that I think the Broncos have a little more firepower in general in offense, to be honest with you. And the Chargers were a little sloppy last week versus the Raiders. I wasn't too much of a fan, how they were being sloppy at times. But if they can put the full game together, they will win this game. I'm just taking this as the Broncos are hungry. They're going to come into this game and they're going to want to bounce back from last week, and I think the Broncos find a way to bounce back in LA. That's another thing that made it difficult for me. I'm like, am I really gonna pick the Broncos to upset the Chargers? I think it would be an upset to beat the Broncos over in LA or to beat the Chargers over in LA. I'm like, yeah, give me the Broncos. I think that the Broncos can do it. That defense is very good. I think that defense is gonna come back and show you really what this defense is all about. And I think that Bo Nix is going to put together a full game. These Broncos could put together a full game. I think they win this football game. So, and I like Herbert. I'm not talking anything bad on Herbert. I think Herbert is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He's top 5, top 4, top 3. But the issue is, it's just, he's got a great offensive line. Will Quentin Johnson continue to step up? Lad McConkey is a monster. That he is all the way through. But who else is going to step up? I think the Chargers are going to look for someone else to step up in this game, and I just don't think whoever else does is going to be enough. You do have Keenan Allen, right? And, you do have some other names in there. But I just think that this Broncos man coverage and the talent that they have is going to show through here. And I think they're going to, and I think that Broncos defense is going to make the bigger play when it matters most. And that Chargers defense, maybe 27 points is a lot for the Broncos because that Chargers defense is gross. They're suffocating. They're tough. But I think this, it's a divisional game. So, those kind of things, your opponents know you better than anyone else does. So give me Denver. Give me Denver to beat the Chargers and to surprise a lot of people this weekend. All right, Seahawks and Saints. Saints have been one of the worst teams in the league. And I think you're getting a lot of really good flashes from Spencer Rattler. I think Rattler is a guy you stick with for the next year or so and see what he can become. I think he's got a good foundation to grow on. It's just he's got some weapons. He's got the offensive line is rough. Alvin Kamara is aging, but you saw Alvin Kamara. But now you're facing the task of a really tough defense in front of you. This is a competent defense. They know what they're going to want to do. They're going to give the Saints offense a hard time. And that Seattle offense just running the football. Just in terms of being able to run that football, you get up early and really just put the foot on the neck early of the Saints. And the Seahawks are that team. They're a pretty good team. I'm not saying they're great, but I'm saying that this is a good football team that is going to beat bad teams the way that they should. And Saints are a bad team. Seahawks are a solid football team. So give me Seattle. I have this wrong. Hold up. I got to fix this. All right, here we go. That is much better. So I see a lot of people looking at this game and a lot of people taking the Bears, actually. I think not even necessarily taking the Bears, but saying that this could be a big upset game. I disagree. I just don't see the Bears pulling this one out. I mean, I could see it being a closer game. I could see maybe the Bears putting up some points and Caleb Williams and this, and maybe he figures something out this week. The way the Cowboys defense looked last week, heck. But I just don't see this Bears defense being able to slow down the Cowboys offense. I just don't see it. The Bears really struggle against, explosive plays and stopping the big play. And you got CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Jake Ferguson, and Dak Prescott throwing the ball at the defense, with a decent offensive line. I could see this if this is a game where the Cowboys would have to put up 50+, I could see it easily. This Bears defense, especially with Jalen Johnson being out as well, I don't see this Bears defense being able to keep this game close or give them a chance. I don't see this Bears defense being able to get that big stop. But maybe this, I do question that Cowboys defense a little bit, but I'm taking Dallas just because of the reasons that I stated. I really don't think, Caleb Williams, even if he does get it figured out, he hasn't been really all that hot the first 2 weeks. He's really struggled. I really want to see Tyson Bagent. I think that offense, the weapons that he would have, I think Tyson Bagent would be able to run a competent offense. I just haven't been able to see it too much from Caleb Williams. I don't see it over there. Give me Dallas. Give me Dak Prescott. Give me an offense that can put up 50+ on a defense like this. And, the Bears defense isn't all that bad as I'm making it out to be. It's just that, it's not good. It hasn't particularly been good. It's not as bad as I'm making it out to be, but it's just a really bad matchup for the Bears defense and a great matchup for the Cowboys offense. So give me Dallas 31-23. I can see this game not being too close either. I could see this game being the Cowboys score 40+ easily. Wouldn't shock me one bit, but give me Dallas 31-23 over Chicago. All right, the Cardinals and the Niners. The Niners going into another week being just extremely beat up. It's looking like it's going to be Mac Jones again. And either way, Mac Jones or Brock Purdy, I think that the Niners get this game done. The Cardinals, they just can't put a full game together. They can't finish games right. They started the game good last week, but then they couldn't finish it. Kyler Murray just isn't looking right. He's small, but he's just not really looking right in general. I don't really care, how big or small a quarterback is. If you could play, you could play. But Murray is, this entire Cardinals team is just so inconsistent in general. And, this Niners team is pretty much the opposite in terms of, being consistent. That Niners defense is absolutely absurd. And if Kyler Murray can put it together this game, have a consistent game, then I think that the Cardinals have a pretty good shot and they could put up, just enough points and beat the Niners and outscore them. But I don't think they could do it. I straight up don't think they could do it. I think the Niners are going to run the football, as they want. I will say, Cardinals, that young secondary is absolutely wonderful. Will Johnson has been great. And I keep on blanking on the other young cornerback's name, but he's been absolutely phenomenal. I did it the first 2 weeks already. I did it last week already. I did it before. But the Cardinals, they're really promising, good young secondary. You still have Budda Baker back there. But the issue is, it's just it feels like they're having a hard time starting a game. Yeah, they started last game strong. It feels like they're having a hard time putting a full game together. And the way this 49ers team is coached, I think Mac Jones, he has just enough. He's going to do his job. He's going to do what he needs to do. He's not going to be great. He's not going to knock your socks off, but he's going to be a quarterback that's going to go out there. He's going to do his job, and he's going to give his team a chance to win. And I think that the Niners win this weekend, 21-19, giving the Niners over the Arizona Cardinals. Giants and Chiefs. Whew, boy, oh boy, oh boy. I think this is a get-right game for the Chiefs. I think it's a get-right game for their offense, get-right game for their defense. I think this is a game where the Chiefs figure it out. I'm not saying the Giants are a bad football team, but I'm not saying the Giants are a really good football team. The Giants do match up interestingly versus the Chiefs, but I think that this is a perfect game for that Chiefs defense to get back at it and do what they do best. Just go at and attack that offense. They've played a couple of games the last few weeks where it's been difficult to go at and attack Philly's offense for good reason in terms of their run game, their line, just the way they play football. But a team where they don't really have a good offensive line. They can't run the football. They can't control the game. They can't control the line of scrimmage on offense anyways. This is an offense that's going to really struggle this game. Even though I still have them putting up 20 points, I still think they stick to a similar game plan to last week. I sure hope they do, because they cannot afford to be going for, the Russell Wilson deep ball shit, because it doesn't work. You have no offensive line. You don't have time. But I think the Chiefs handle business. They go to New York. They handle business. It's a get-right game. It's a must-win for the Chiefs. It's crazy that we're looking at this game and, there's a conversation to be had about this game. But give me Kansas City, man. They get it right. Patrick Mahomes, Hollywood Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster. I think Travis Kelce has a monster game. And, the Giants have a really good defense. They do. The Giants have a tough defense. Even though they allowed a lot of points over there to the Cowboys, I think they're calling too much man coverage. I think man coverage is their biggest problem. You don't really have that guy. You don't really have, the personnel to play man coverage. So you got to call more zone. You got to call something else, because the man coverage isn't it. And versus a team like the Cowboys, it's probably literally the worst team to call man coverage on, regardless of who you have on defense. They're playing the Chiefs. Maybe you could say you get away with a little bit, but I really don't think so. Mahomes is going to make you pay these, and I think the Chiefs really get things going this week. Give me Kansas City 31-20 over New York. They put it all together. I'm not going to overthink this game, and next game though, I'm really just kind of in a rush to get to this game, because this game, holy smokes, this game has matchups galore. So many places to watch this game, but ultimately I do think one team, they're both really good football teams, both elite offenses, both have defenses that can play well. Neither defense has really showed up yet this year the way we thought they would. But let me tell you this. I think there is a clear better team in this game, and I think it's the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson is more dynamic than Jared Goff. There's no slight at Jared Goff. If he gets time, he's very good. But there's so many good matchups. How is Amon Ra going to do against like Marlon Humphrey or, and then, the running backs coming, the Lions probably do want to try and, well, not probably, your key is to limit Lamar Jackson, try to stop that passing game a little bit. But I don't know if they could do that. And then on top of that, you got a Ravens really potent run defense. You don't really want the Ravens to lean, or potent run offense. You don't really want the Ravens to lean into that run game, but they could and they will. So I really think that I think Jared Goff, I think this Ravens defense makes an extra play, and they, it's iron versus iron, but I think that this Ravens defense is going to make that extra play or two, whether it's a turnover from Goff, making someone fumble, interception, whatever it may be. I think the Ravens make that extra big-time play, and I think that's why the Ravens win this game. And I think they win this game pretty convincingly, to be honest with you. I think the Ravens are a lot better than the Lions. I don't think the Ravens are just a little bit. I think they're a lot better than the Lions, especially early on in the year when the Lions still have new coordinators. They're still trying to get things figured out on that end, in those situations. And it's not a good week it's not really a week that you're going to get yourself right. And if they do, I'll step back and be like, damn, Lions, okay, you proved me wrong. But I think that this offense may even struggle this week. I could see one of those butt whooping games where the Ravens just come out and they find a way just to absolutely dominate in every facet. I can see that the Ravens are capable of that, and I don't know if the Lions are as good as everyone thinks they are this year. Now the score that I have here says that I do think they're somewhat close, but I really don't think they're that close to the Ravens. I think the Ravens are the better football team, and I think it's clear that they're the better football team if we do your homework and you watch the football. And you go back and you watch these games, I think the Ravens are the clear-cut better team, to be quite honest with you. And Lions fans are going to absolutely hate me after this one. And I'm not saying the Lions are bad. The Lions aren't a bad football team. The Ravens are just that team. The Ravens are just, the Ravens is that team that could go ahead and dominate another really solid football team. They could do it against the Bills. They didn't this past week, but this is a team that's capable of putting up such performances. And I wouldn't be shocked if they do it this game and everyone's just like, wow, the Ravens just blew everyone out of the water. Not even a chance. But I'm taking Baltimore. I know, I'm not really giving Detroit too much credit here. If they get the run game, they're going to have to get that run game going, and I think the Ravens are going to do a good job in stopping that. I think the Ravens are going to force Jared Goff to go ahead and throw the football all day long. And then, I say Jared Goff has a hiccup here and there. He makes a mistake or two, and I think that Lions offensive line is going to get pummeled. Especially, when Baltimore knows, when that defensive line knows and that front seven knows, it's just going to be passing. It's going to be majority passing. I think that Ravens defensive line is going to really get at it. But I would say that's kind of bold, the way I went about predicting this game. The way I went about talking about this, about this game is really bold. But that's what I believe in. That's what I see when I'm rewatching football, when I'm rewatching all these games. I think the Ravens are the clear-cut better football team, so give me Baltimore 33-24. Wouldn't be shocked if this is a butt-whooping. So that's all I got for you guys this week. Thank you for tuning in to my NFL Week 3 predictions, score predictions, picks, all that good stuff, talking about the lines a little bit. But that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys next time.